Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado with Men Survival. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. Today I have a special video for you. I was interviewed by Mike Adams at Brighteon.com. It was an honor to be with him, and is what I'm gonna be showing you today. So hopefully you enjoy it. Please leave your comments at the bottom and let me know what you think. That was my very first interview ever, so hopefully I didn't screw up too much, but watch it and let me know what you think. But again, my name is Jose Prado, and remember, always ready.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Welcome everybody, this is Mike Adams, the founder of Brighteon.com, with a new episode of Brighteon Conversations, where we reach out and talk to some of the most interesting people who are posting videos on Brighteon.com, including videos of topics that are censored everywhere else. Don't you love uncensored videos on Brighteon.com? By the way, if you love Brighteon.com, check out this new shirt, Get Red Pilled. Brighteon.com, this is at the Brighteon store. We have a whole series of new t-shirts now, including Dismantle the Tech Tyrants and some other t-shirts. We're making these in-house. They're made from USA cotton and they're printed in the USA in Texas. So you're gonna love these t-shirts. Check those out. Now, today we have a very special guest. His name is Jose Prado, and he's the founder of Man-Made Survival. And the website is manmadesurvival.com. I've been watching his videos on Brighteon and I found him to be extremely informative. He's a full-on prepper. He really knows his stuff. And today we're going to talk about scenarios of what we're prepping for and maybe some things that you might not have thought about in your own preparedness and priorities of prepping. So he joins us now for this fascinating conversation. Jose, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. And it's just an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, it's just great to have you. I always like to start with a little background. Tell people about manmadesurvival.com and basically what it is that you do there.
All right, so basically the reason I started this Man-Made Survival is because in my private life, I would tell my friends, coworkers that they needed to prepare the things that they needed to look for because, we were headed for trouble. The trouble we're seeing now, I was seeing it then. So that's the reason, I started telling people. And, some people did take the warning, some people didn't, which is, normal. But that pretty much gave me the idea to start doing this professionally, I guess you could say, and tell people really what's going on, because a lot of people do not understand what's going on and they don't know what to look for because they're just trying really hard to live their life day to day, and they don't have time, or they really don't have actually the mind to, look forward to the future and actually prepare for things.
Well, so the first question for you then is, are people now more open to this message than before because of the whole COVID lockdown situation, the food shortages, all that? Are people more awake now, or are you still meeting a lot of resistance?
Yeah, I'm meeting people that are more open to it, because the sad thing is that people don't care until it starts happening to them. Like we see people in Portland, or we see people in Austin, Texas, or, places around the country. They don't care what's going on until it happens to them or their pocketbook. So people are starting to listen, but other people are still feeling like it's going to go back to normal. And a lot of people don't understand that normal is never going back, which is,
right,
one of the reasons why they should prepare. But they're going to wait to the last second pretty much.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that the globalists have handed scripts to the media to tell everybody that there's going to be a new normal, right? You've heard this term, the new normal. That means we're never going back. Right. And they're trying to say, get used to this. Get used to being a slave in your lockdown state of New York. Get used to roadside checkpoints. Get used to going to jail for not wearing a mask while the criminals in jail are let free to commit crimes. That's the new normal. That's what they tell us. But hopefully this reality is starting to penetrate the minds of some people, especially when their local cities are burning down, right? Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, definitely, because things have escalated from when they first started with George Floyd. It now has nothing to do with George Floyd. They have changed their platform over and over, and things are not what they started out to be. And now they just want to steal. They just want to loot the stores for reparations or whatever they want to, call it. But they're really the whole point here is that they just seen an opportunity and they're taking it to do whatever they want.
Right.
You know, we've seen that in Chicago and in places like that where the expensive stores, they're looting them because they're saying that it doesn't really matter because they have insurance. So people are really just taking advantage of the situation, and they don't really care what Black Lives Matter stands for.
Well, that was the justification of bank robbers too. You know, it doesn't matter. Rob the bank, they've got insurance. Okay, let me ask you a few questions. You don't have to give up your personal location, but roughly what part of the country do you live in?
I live in Alabama.
Okay, all right. So you're nowhere near these Democrat-run cities that are having these problems right now.
No, but when the first protest broke out, it did break up in my local city, which would be Birmingham.
Yeah.
We did see some stores' windows being broken, but nothing major, nothing really to the same, you know.
Okay. And then in terms of your survival advice to people, what are you currently focusing on in terms of priorities that people are missing? I mean, we know the obvious ones, like, you know, food, but what else? What else is on your list?
So the way that I've talked to people is the people who are just not starting because now they just woke up, right? They've never thought about preparedness until this point. Since they're just not starting, they need to collect the basics, which is the water, the food, you know, ammo and guns. For the mid-level preppers, I would say that instead of you focusing on collecting anything else anymore, you know, they need to train. Right now, they should focus on training your guns, you know, your plan of escape, you know, how to really be in tune with your team and the tactical things that y'all have going on or that you may be thinking, because right now you're in the game now. You know, it's no longer about preparedness in the sense that you need to accumulate anything else. Now you have to put it into practice. Now you have to practice, because if you don't practice and you don't have that in tune, when things come to your door, you're not going to be 100% sure how to handle it.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people I've met over the years who have a Glock on the shelf in their home that they've never fired, and they have one 50-round box of ammo. And they're like, yeah, I'm all ready for everything. Really? Really?
And that's another thing, like something that I've noticed is that, you know, on Reddit and other places where they talk about survival is that they think they're preparing for only 2 weeks, that economic collapse is only going to last a weekend, but they don't really understand that it's going to be years. You know, it could be 7, 8 years. For example, one of the things I always talk about is that the United States is on the road to Venezuela, right? Because of our hyperinflation that we could experience, all the money that we're printing. They have been experiencing that for 7 years now, going on 8.
That's right.
Those people, the preppers that were there, you know, they thought it was only going to last a year or a few months, but now they 8 years into it, and they were not prepared for it as much as they thought they were going to be.
Yeah, and doesn't this also, I gotta take this off, I'm cooking over here. It's too hot in Texas at the moment. But doesn't this also speak to, you know, they had Chavez in Venezuela before Maduro, and under Chavez, the people all agreed to give up their guns.
Right.
They said, oh, the government's going to take care of us. Look at Chavez. He's got free handouts and benefits, and he's going to take oil money and just distribute it to everyone. We'll all be fine. Well, guess what? Now you're a slave in a system where you have to dumpster dive for lunch, and people are eating zoo animals. Those are probably all gone by now. But if you give up your guns, I mean, isn't that that red line that you should never cross as a citizen?
Yeah, you should never let it get that far. If you know that you got that far, then whatever follows next is going to be to the discretion of the government. They can do with you whatever they want to do at that point.
And I think we're seeing that in California right now with,
yeah.
Well, and also come to think of it, look at Australia, Melbourne, Australia, this vicious, crazy lockdown where almost nobody's getting infected. You can't even go home. Like if you were spending the night at a friend's house, you're stuck for 6 weeks. You can't even go home. Well, guess what? All the citizens gave up their guns. What was it? 15 years ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, and now it's not working out for them. And now the government can find them as much as they want. They can tell them to do whatever they want to do, and they can put them on lockdown indefinitely until they feel like it.
Yeah,
so
and they are doing that.
They don't have the opportunity, or even if they do have the opportunity to rise up and not take it anymore, but at what cost? It's going to be a lot more expensive than it would have if they would have taken care of their freedom.
Well, it's hard to fight for freedom against tyranny using machetes.
Right.
It's really hard. But let's get into firearms. What are you currently recommending that people look into? And also understanding that right now, basically every Glock and SIG and M&P pistol sold out everywhere. Every AR-15, Daniel Defense, Patriot Ordnance, everything sold out basically everywhere. What are you telling people to do on firearms if they're behind the curve on that?
Yeah, I've noticed in my area, the AR-15s are all completely gone. The ammo is completely gone. I called one of the people that I get my ammo from when they were going to have any more, because I just wanted to add to the, to the pile. And they said they were not going to have any until September. And I called him in July. And then, I told them that I wanted to go ahead and place an order for September. And they said they wouldn't do that because they didn't know whether the manufacturer was even going to be able to ship it out, because the government might just take it. So in those cases, just try to see what's on the shelf that they still have ammo for, and try to get those guns, because that's what's available. You cannot. It's not so much about the gun, in my opinion, it's so much of what's the ammo that they actually have there, because you may have the gun, but if you have no ammo for it, you just bought an expensive paperweight,
Absolutely. I've also found on Guns America, there's a lot of people selling used pistols at new prices or above new prices. Like I saw a used SIG P320, which used to be maybe $350. Now it's like $700, but you can still get it if you're willing to pay double, So there is that option for people to look at. It's kind of like a tax for being late.
Yes. And that's one of the things that I pointed out when I first started my podcast, is that if you wait for the last minute, you are going to pay double or triple the price that you normally would if you would have done it beforehand. Yep. That's what we saw with the with all the panic buying that we saw in New York and California and Washington when the coronavirus first came. First everything was gone out of the shelves. Then they had to put limits on how much you could buy. And even you can have all the money in the world, but they only allow you to buy one. You're only going to take one. So you have to have everything before those things go into effect.
Absolutely. And like you said, ammo, I remember, last Black Friday, you could buy, I think from Palmetto State Armor, you could buy a can of 420 rounds of 5.56 green tip for $129. That is now, seems like it's almost $300. It's getting close to $300.
Yeah, if there's any on the shelf too.
If you can even find it, yeah. I mean, it's 65 cents a round, 70 cents a round for a 5.56 full metal jacket now. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's a question to you. Do you teach people about what kind of ammo they need for real self-defense loads? Not just 9mm full metal jacket. That's not going to help that much.
Yeah, no, yeah. The best to get would be the hollow point. But I haven't really talked about that much in my podcast. But it is one of the things that I talk to people personally. When they ask me what should I get, I said that you need to get hollow point, because they are more accurate, and you know that if you hit that person that one time, more than likely they're gonna die, and you're gonna put that threat down, and you have to move on to the next, whatever comes your way.
Absolutely. I have noticed that a lot of the premium rounds, like expanding tip hunting rounds for rifles, are still available, or you can get them on back order, whereas the sort of low cost rounds are impossible to find at this point. Let me ask you about what threats do you think are going to face us first in America? Are like civil war, the chaos that we're seeing in the city is going to get worse, or do you think we're looking at an EMP attack, a grid down scenario? What's on your mind as the top threats?
Well, me personally, I have 5 threats that I prepare for, and one of the things that I tell people that they need to look into or think about when they do their plan is that the supply chain is going to collapse. Whatever it is, that's what you have to prepare for, because a lot of people don't understand that if the trucks stop running, there's no more grocery stores. I mean, there's no more groceries at the grocery store, or ammo at the local gun store. So whatever the scenario is that is going to stop the supply chain from flowing, you need to prepare. Now, for me, I have 5 things: the Civil War, economic collapse, a nuke in the United States, invasion, and an EMP. Those are the things that I prepare for, and I tell people to prepare for.
Out of those 5 things, I mean, it seems like some of those would cause other ones too. So, obviously, if we have an invasion, they're going to take down the power grid as they roll through the country, things like that.
Yeah, the way I see that it's going to happen, or the way that I think maybe how things are going to pretty much fold out is that first we're going to have the economic collapse. Then we will have a full-blown civil war, not these things that we're seeing in Portland or anything like that. I'm talking about when the rural areas are actually going into the cities to, actually fight for whatever it is. And it's going to be the money supply. And then I see it that we're going to go into war and we may get, a nuke, an EMP, and then an invasion. That's the way that I see it might happen.
So you're thinking that as America is weakened internally from its own domestic strife, that enemies of America would take advantage of those vulnerabilities to invade physically and try to occupy the country?
Yes, because, and not only that, we're also provoking a lot of stuff with China right now. And we know that China and Russia will team up to go against the United States. So, now the Chinese are telling their people to not fire first if things get out of hand with the United States, but who's to say that they will not shoot first and then that escalates to an actual war? Because this Cold War that we've been experiencing, we've been going through for the past several years, can get hot real quick. What I think is happening is that China may be trying to run the clock on the election, and hopefully Donald Trump doesn't get elected. That way things don't escalate, because we know that Joe Biden has a lot of deals with the Chinese and everything like that. They have interest. So I believe that they might see that as a way to cool things down and wait. Now, will it go that far? Will Trump get elected again? I believe he might get elected again, and I hope he does. Because
well, Joe Biden is China's bitch, and he'll do whatever they want. And that's why they want Biden to win. And have you also heard that China is providing weapons to the Black Lives Matter terrorists? We've covered that quite a bit on Natural News. So China, you talk about election interference. I mean, China is bringing weapons into the United States. It's been intercepted by Customs and Border Protection.
Yes,
it's not just a theory.
And I wonder how many of those weapon caches actually came through that we didn't catch.
Right.
We caught that one and it was that huge. How many more could have gone through?
Well, and so it's a big deal for preppers in the U.S. because preppers need to understand that you're going to be facing enemies who have full auto weapons with illegal upgrades that have been smuggled in from China. So, if you thought they were all just kind of like fragile soy boys who don't know how to shoot, think again. There's a lot of militants with heavy weapons that are going to be firing, full auto in your direction.
Exactly, and we're seeing that they're bringing guns into the equation now. The one Black Lives Matter supporter who actually got killed in Texas, that he fired at the car and the car fired back, and actually took care of the threat. That's one of the things that people need to notice too. That practice is going to be on your favor. If you have more practice than your enemy, then you can handle the weapon better. You have the actual legal, I guess you can say, the upgrades on the weapon, and you know how to handle it. You're going to have the upper hand. So right. That's why it's important for you to not prepare, but practice.
How do you recommend that people do that? You like a lot of dry fire practice or what? I mean, it's kind of hard. It's hard now for people to go out and get training, although there are some, like Tactical Response still has classes all over the country. It's harder now, though, for a lot of people to get training. So what do you recommend for that training?
Yeah, so what I recommend is that if you can do dry fire, you should do that. But places like in my state, our gun ranges are still open. The national forests that have ranges is still open. And, 2-3 weekends ago, I went with my team and we practiced. We got some time at the range. So you could do that. If you're in a state that's absolutely locked down, like California or, other places, then you should drive out of state if you even can anymore, because now they're doing roadblocks, Right. But you should do everything you can right now to actually practice and make sure that you're toned, you're home with your skills and all those things, because your time for sharpening is almost over.
Yeah, and I've noticed this weird catch-22 with people who refuse to prep. Like they say, well, I'll practice when things get bad. I'll do it then. And then when things get bad, their excuse is, well, the ammo's too expensive now. I can't use the ammo. Like, well, dude, you have no skills. What's the point?
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, they're bringing their doom to themselves, because they waited too long. If they still have the mentality of, if I wait till later, it's gonna bite them in the butt. And later will never come.
Right. Okay, so you have an online store as well, manmadesurvivalstore.com. Give us a little overview of what you offer in your store for people.
So the things that I offer on there is I have the bug out bags. I have I sell the boxes of EMP protection, that has the box or the bag that has that's EMP proof. The little shields. Also, I have what I call the Nook box that has the whole suit on there. Whoa. And it has the mask and all that. So the Geiger counters, and I have the buckets of food, and stuff like that in there. That's the stuff that I have on my store.
So it's like a kit where people don't have to decide every little thing. Like you put it all in one kit, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, well that's cool. Yeah, people should check that out. Maybe we can show some of that on screen while you're describing it. And then, in terms of what's on your website, I know you do videos because that's what I've seen. Do you also do any other types? Like, do you do articles or podcasts or anything else?
Well, the website, we just now recently constructed it, so it's still, I guess you can say, a little bit under construction. But I have a book on there that I'm promoting, that I'm giving away for free for people who are just starting into prepping and they don't know what to stock up on or why to stock it up. I talk about different scenarios on that book. So mainly that's what the website is for. But the podcast that I do is on Brighteon and YouTube and other platforms as well.
Yeah, very cool. And are you getting a good response, or you have a lot of trolls out there? I mean, just to begin with, man-made survival. So I'm sure the feminists hate the word man, or are they giving you crap about that?
I do get a few trolls every once in a while, but when they leave a comment on there, when I respond, I don't do it in a negative way to kind of like escalate that. I just pretty much give them my opinion, and if they continue on, I just let it go. But I do get those every once in a while. Yeah.
So what was the idea behind your name, Man-Made Survival?
To be honest, it was just something that we came up with and we liked, because we did have a list of things, and we said, okay, which one? I like this one better than this one, and then he kind of boiled it down to Man-Made Survival. Okay, all right, fair enough. Okay, now let's talk about zombies here for a second, because the term zombies, what we mean by that is typically unprepared, starving masses who are maybe lumbering out of the cities looking for food. We're not talking about actual zombies. Do you talk about how to deal with other people, especially large crowds of people who are unprepared and who are looking for stuff, especially stuff that at your house or your ranch or whatever? How do you teach people to deal with the unprepared masses? So pretty much what I tell people is that when they make their plan, the first thing they have to think about is their alliance, because their alliance is what's going to help them push people away, make sure that the perimeter is not breached and all those things. So when people make a plan, they need to think of two different things. And the things that I tell them to think about is, one, you start with the people that and those are the ones that you consider they're going to be coming to your door. And then everyone outside of that, it's just going to be someone that you can just easily turn away, because it's going to be easier to turn someone you don't know away than someone you do know. So the way that I describe it is that you need to plan like this, right? You start with your own family, with your wife, your husband, your children. And then you go with your wife's siblings, and then your own siblings. And then before you know it, you're going to have this big list of people. And then that list of people, you break it down into three different things, right? One is the responsible adults, two is all the children, and three would be the unreliable people. It could be the lazy people in your family, or it could be somebody with a disability, or maybe even someone with an addiction. So you would approach the people that are the responsible adults, the ones that will listen to whatever you have to say, and kind of like do like a big meeting with all of them. and present them the opportunity to prepare with you. That way, when the day comes and they turn you down, you can say, well, I try to tell you. Now, you should still prepare and, think about them, because when they come looking, for some type of food or handout or whatever, they could be the ones that actually are the workers, the ones that are going to help you tend the garden or take care of the livestock, because you gave them the opportunity to be part of it. But now, since they're outside of it, they're the ones that are going to have to work really for their stay.
Well, this is one of the biggest questions in the prepper community. Everybody knows somebody who says, oh, I'm not going to prepare, but if things hit the fan, I'm coming to your place, right?
Right.
That's the common phrase. I'm coming to you. And I saw an article the other day written, I forgot who wrote it, but they said, no, you're not. And if you do come to my place, I'm probably going to shoot you. That was the article.
Yeah.
And he kind of gave the rationale for that. What's your advice on, I know you kind of described it right there, but what about strangers or people you casually knew who say, I'm coming to your place because you've got all the supplies? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I would just turn them. If in those days, there's church, there's still churches functioning and doing outreach and all those things, I would turn them to that, but definitely give them a very stern, no, go away kind of deal, and if things escalate, then you're going to have to take care of the problem. Like if it was someone that you didn't know that, or somebody's just there to hurt you, that's just going to be, I do come from Mexico, and Mexico is a crap hole and it's a third world country. And the way that you deal with people like that is that you just have to confront them. There's no nice way to go about it or anything like that, but you do have to put a stop to whoever wants to come and get your stuff.
Well, you may have a real advantage there compared to most Americans who have never really seen anything other than a polite society. So they think everybody's going to be polite. They've never had a group of 3 people come to their door and insist on taking your stuff.
Right.
And they're probably going to be, the average American, I would say, is going to be way too late to react, like after they're stabbed.
Right.
Or after they're shot. Then they'll realize, oh my God, we're not living in polite society anymore. Yeah, you dumbass. You should have realized that when they approached your property with rifles.
Exactly. Yeah, and the good thing from where I live, I have 5 acres. So if anybody was to try to get to my house, first they have to go through a fence, and then they have to walk 2-3 acres by the time they got to my front door. So I will know right away anyone in my area. And besides, I'm very secluded, so it would be a given that I know they're there because they're looking for something that they don't have, right?
Right.
But for people who live in the suburbs where they only have a few feet from the front door to the street, those are the people who are seeing themselves having more trouble trying to fend people off because they really don't have much space to really push them back to, because they could just a few hundred feet and they're there. So one of the things that we're seeing with Black Lives Matter is that they're saying that they're going to go to the suburbs now. So what I would suggest to people is to start doing roadblocks with the community, making sure that they don't actually go in there and burn down houses or throw bricks through windows or actually shoot people. Because when it gets to that point, it'll be a matter of time before we hear that someone got raped or somebody got killed or stuff like that,
I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's a really crucial point, is controlling access to your neighborhood, your streets.
Yes.
And there are lots of good ways, obviously, for people to have roadblocks, including, parking vehicles across the road, or, if you had to cut down a tree, drag it across the road, things like that. But with a vehicle, you can open it and close it, based on who you want to have access. Forcing the enemy to go slow and to make lots of turns and curves as they approach you also gives you response time to engage them if they are an enemy force.
Yes, definitely. And the people who live in Portland right now, who live in Minneapolis and places like that, who are actually seeing very bad action, I guess you can say, they're the ones that they should be patrolling their neighborhoods 24/7 now, making sure that if there's a crowd of people coming, that they don't let them through and do their best to actually keep them away from, the women and children pretty much, because they're going to do bad things to them when things get to that point.
Yeah, that's the other thing that a lot of Americans don't yet realize, again, because they've grown up in polite society. So they really have no clue how vicious people can get when they're desperate or when they're criminals or when they're demonic, as we might say. And now, this is my question for you. Across liberal cities, we see this effort to defund police, and that effort is succeeding. Police budgets are being cut in New York and Los Angeles and Seattle and Portland. Police are getting laid off. Police chiefs are resigning. I mean, do these people have any clue what's going to happen when there's no more police? Have they even thought about it? Are they effing insane?
Yeah, I don't think that they've thought about it. Like again, I think it goes back to where they think it's going to go back to normal at one point. They just have to weather the storm and just wait. And I don't think it's ever going to be that way. They have to consider that if with the full funding that the police had, with all the police officers they had, they were already having problems with criminals and criminal activity and all those things. What's it going to be like when there's no police? It's a given. They don't have to wait. They can just Google how it is to live in Mexico, Google how it is to live in Venezuela. Anything south of the border, you understand real quick that you need the police, and your message of solidarity is not going to go very far when you're the target next. Right.
Because that's what they do. They're targeting police. They're gonna try to kill the police and the sheriff's deputies, and they've already protested the home of the police chief, I think, in Seattle. There's no end to the violence until someone stops them.
Right.
And guess how you stop a violent mob?
Exactly.
It's called an AR-15.
How the point? Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we saw with CHOP and Chaz is that the government didn't, or the mayor didn't really care what was going on in her city, what happened to her citizens. They only care when it happened to her house, when they came to her house and protest. Then the police, the very next day, they were able to clear that out when they couldn't do it for days or weeks, however long it took. So that goes to show that these mayors, these Democrats on these cities, they don't care about the citizens. They only care about themselves. That goes to show.
Seems also then that people who still own property or live in Democrat-controlled cities, they really need to be bugging out.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's happening.
Yes, there's a lot of people. I have some people in my channel who have actually told me that they left New York for other places because how bad it has gotten. So people are doing those things. And of course, there's people who cannot afford actually getting out of there. But they really need to think, how much longer can I survive in a situation like this? Do I need to talk to a relative that lives outside of the city, maybe in another state, see if they'll let you go over there so you can get back on your feet because of how bad things are getting in those places? Because it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. And we've seen that now, and not only did they start with protests, but they brought guns into the equation. Now they're bringing, makeshift bombs that they're putting BBs in and actually hurting the police officers. They have these lasers that are blinding police officers. So they're not there to be peaceful at all. Anybody who keeps saying that they're peaceful, they just have lost their mind. And they're just toting the line. But we know by their actions that they are not peaceful at all.
Yeah, that's so true, Jose. And it reminds me, let me ask you a cultural question about this and about the receptiveness among the Latino community to preparedness. And the background is, I used to live in Ecuador, lived there for a couple of years, and did a lot of food farming and had a lot of local friends. I even had a driver's license in Ecuador that you have to take the test in Espanol. There's no English test for that. So what I learned is that the people, at least in rural Ecuador, and I'm not saying that everybody's the same all across South America, but generally speaking, the rural people had an amazing assortment of skills of how to repair things, how to fix things, how to sharpen machetes, like how to fix broken water pipes without using parts that in America, the average person would run to Home Depot and get a part. No, in rural Ecuador, you have baling wire. Figure it out. You know what I mean? But yes. the average person in Ecuador that I encountered, they were very practical and very hands-on. They could solve a lot of problems with their bare hands that typical Americans could never solve. Is that something that translates into preparedness in your view?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that when you're broke and you don't have any money to go to Home Depot or anything like that, you have to get creative. A lot of people, they just either call somebody to fix it for them, and if they try to do it themselves to save some money, they just run and get a new part. places like that, places where I come from, you're broke, you have very little money, and whatever you do have, you spend it on food and actually keeping a roof over your head, to where you don't have money to actually fix things. So you come up with ideas to fix it or replace it to where you don't spend much money, or if any at all. That's the things that I've experienced, or that I've done, in my life growing up.
What about the Latino communities in America? Is that a significant portion of your audience?
Actually, no, I don't. I have one or two people, but no, it's not. It's mainly Americans that listen to the podcast.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I didn't mean to make an assumption. I just figured. No, do you do any podcasts in Espanol, or is it all English?
It's all English. I tried to do it in Spanish at first, but I didn't get the traction that I wanted, so I wanted to put it off until I guess people knew my name a little better.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope you do some in Spanish, just because, the more people are prepared everywhere, the better off we all are.
Right.
And I've found that, like, for example, I would talk about nutrition and corn syrup and things like that, obviously in English for many, many years. And I would find that the Latino communities in America were many years behind getting that information, because there weren't enough voices in Spanish talking about corn syrup and the diabetes problem, for example, in the Latino communities.
Yes.
I think they need more voices.
Yeah, we have actually definitely talked about that. We don't have a set time to do that yet, but it's something that's in the works.
Well, that would be really great. Yeah, if you do that, let me know, and definitely get those videos up on Brighteon, because we'd love to get some Spanish-speaking people watching those videos and getting more prepped for what's coming. I live in Texas, and the southern half of the state, no one speaks English, I think. So they need to be prepped too.
Yes, definitely.
Everybody, the more prepared everybody is, the better off we all are. Okay, so then if your audience is mostly just English-speaking people, who are you roughly reaching? I mean, how would you describe your audience overall?
Well, YouTube has the matrix that show you the age difference, I guess, or not difference, but groups.
Yeah.
And pretty much I hit people between 30 and 60. That's the range, both male and female. Mostly male though. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of like, that's who I reached too. I thought I was like the old fogey here, and you were reaching a much younger audience.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised, and in other countries too, which encourages me that people are listening from other countries and all those age groups. So hopefully they learn and they get the stuff that I'm saying, and they see the time that we're living now, so they don't delay if they have not actually prepared and taken the steps to make sure that they're good, and their families too.
You get messages from people in Canada or New Zealand, and they're drooling over all your supplies in Alabama. They're like, you can buy guns and ammo, and they can't.
Yeah. I've seen those messages from Canada. Mainly, I've seen New Zealand. I think I've seen something from China, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In the UK, in the UK, if you defend your home, they arrest you.
Yes.
It's insane.
And that's something that we're seeing too. The rich lawyer that tried to protect his house. To me, that was insanity, but it shouldn't really be surprising, You
mean it was insanity that he was charged with a crime?
Yeah, he was charged with the crime. Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, why would they do that? I mean, that should show the agenda behind it, that they don't want people to protect themselves. And
of course,
they're going to make their life a living hell until they either run them off the state or they give them another option but to fight.
But see, that's another reason why people should move out of the liberal cities, because that was a city, I think a St. Louis city prosecutor or whatever the local county was there. If he had been outside of the city of St. Louis, number one, the mob never would have been at his doorstep, because they're not going to walk 100 miles to protest your farm. And then secondly, the DA, the local DA, wouldn't have been, a George Soros appointee, basically. So if you want to defend yourself, you got to get out of the cities for those reasons as well. You need to get into a friendly climate where you can actually assert your right to self-defense, the castle doctrine.
Yes, exactly. In the southern states, we have that doctrine. We can actually defend our homes, and
that's right.
And make sure that our families protected. And in these cities, those people who have let it gone for so long, now they're paying the consequences for doing that. Because one of the things that I told people when we first saw the protests and, George Floyd and everything, I said that all of these were problems that could have been taken care of locally.
Right.
It didn't have to be a nationwide type of deal. They could have just told their city council, their mayor, their governor that they didn't want those policies, and they could have taken care of that at home, not all over the country.
Yeah, exactly. No, the escalation was pumped up by the media. It was desirable by the left. They want to cause chaos. And that's the other thing. And a question to you on that is, since we now have basically half the country that wants lawlessness and chaos, we have seen a collapse in support for gun control, number one. And we've seen liberals and progressives buying guns like never before. I mean, even people I know who are liberals are like, which gun should I buy? They call me like, please tell me which gun I should buy. I'm like, you should have watched my videos for the last 5 years. You know what I mean? But now, gun control is over. When there's no police, what's your option? It's called the Second Amendment, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's why I'm a big defender of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, because that's something that I didn't grow up with. I never had the opportunity to defend my family, to defend my home. But now that I'm here in the United States legally, I'm able to do those things. That's why I recognize what a treasure it is. And that's why I tell people that they need to protect it. They need to, continue to make it last and not let it collapse. Because once this system is gone, which has proven to be the best system that's out there, then they're going to see themselves as a third world country. They won't be able to defend themselves. And all the horrors that I've seen in my country and I've seen in other places, they're going to experience it here. So they must be proactive into defending the Constitution, defending the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and not let these people, try to say they're exercising the First Amendment right when really all they want to do is loot and steal and, break down shops and take things from rich people or whatever you want to call it.
Do you mind if I ask, to what age did you live in Mexico?
I moved here when I was 10 years old, but then I had to go back for a year when I had to fix my status.
Oh, okay. And were you in an area that was strongly impacted by the cartels?
Yeah, Mexico City. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you saw a lot of this happening firsthand.
Yes, and not technically the cartel, but just because people are criminals, your regular criminal every day that you knew who it was because that's their career, and that's something you experience more. Now, when I was little, that's what I experienced. Actually at 7 years old, I got robbed at gunpoint for my bike.
Wow.
Yes. So then now when I went back to fix my status, I noticed, how things were a lot more different than when I was younger. Things were more violent. One time I got invited to go to a nightclub, which I did. And the funny thing is that 5 minutes after I left, the cartel came in and they kidnapped 5 people. Now, I don't know if it was 5 targeted or 5 random, but I'm glad that I was out of there. And that was the last time I ever went to a nightclub in Mexico.
Yeah, no kidding. And so, I think you're right in describing a lot of these left-wing cities in America are collapsing into a similar thing where there's no police that are on your side. Instead, criminal elements run the city, and then you, as a law-abiding citizen, are not allowed to defend yourself, and all the politicians are corrupt and paid off by the criminal networks. That could be Mexico City. That could also be Los Angeles,
Exactly, yeah. And one of the things that I tell people about the police is that you can trust your police here. They're not perfect, and we can have plenty of videos that show the wrong things that they do. And I agree with them at some point. But compared to Mexico, where they can disappear you and nobody says a thing, and if your family says anything, they disappear them too. Or, they do roadblocks not to protect you, but to see what they can steal from you. Those are things that you don't see in the United States, and those are things that people don't understand, that you can trust your police here in the States, which is something you cannot do abroad.
So there in Alabama, you don't have police like targeting you and putting their knees on your neck or anything like that?
No, it's pretty peaceful where I live. The town that I live in, there's only 3,000 people, so it's not very populated.
Yeah. Have you experienced any kind of racism for being from Mexico and living in Alabama?
No, the few times that I actually, got pulled over by the police for speeding or whatever, they were polite. I was polite. I just gave them my documents, and they just gave them back, gave them my ticket, and everybody went on with their day. That was pretty much how it is where I live.
Well, I think half of that interaction is just you being polite and, and not having like MS-13 tattoos on your face.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the phrases that we say in Mexico is that people treat you like you treat them. You know? So if you treat the police, you yell at them, you cuss at them and stuff, they're going to be extra cautious about you, and then things can escalate from there,
Absolutely.
It's better to be civil.
And you mentioned this earlier, so I want to bring it around to this, that most people in their families, they've got somebody who is an addict, some kind of substance abuser person. In a survival scenario, those individuals are cut off, usually from their supply of medication or methadone or whatever, heroin, whatever they're on to, meth, what is it, shake and bake meth all over rural America. I guess people can still make that stuff. Even in a collapse, maybe that's what they'll be doing more. But how do you propose that people should deal with that addict in a survival scenario? Because the addict can be the most dangerous person in any social dynamic because they're desperate. They're out of their minds.
Yeah, I mean, definitely don't let them know any detailed plans of anything. Keep them out of the loop. Don't let them know how much food you got, how much water you got, because if you make them mad, they're going to go to the group that's going to give them that fix or the things that they need. And they're going to say, my family member has all of this at their house. Let's go get it. So the best way is just to keep them out of the loop. Don't say anything to them. And as far as they know, you're as bad off as they are, or your neighbors too. But yeah, that's how I would say that they would have to take care of them.
I've noticed from all the news stories, it seems like addicts think of currency as their drug. So everything else is translated into that. Like if they find out you have a gun, they don't think about using the gun to defend themselves. They think about selling the gun to get drugs.
Yes.
Because the drug is their currency. Mm-hmm. That's all they're trying to get is just the drug. Everything else is just a means to get to that drug. And they rob each other mostly, and they rob family members and so on. And that, I think people need to be aware of that family members are the first targets often of desperate addicts.
Yeah, and they have to, come to terms that, yes, you do have a addict in your house, that they're going to do whatever their body's asking them to do to get that fix, to get, that drug into their system so they can feel better again. And then that's just going to be a cycle that continues. Now, it's going to be to your discretion to kick them out, take them to some place that's going to help them. I don't know, but I guess things will really tell what to do when we actually are in that situation. And it's something that is going to be up to you to decide when.
Yeah, it kind of underscores the urgency of helping people get treatment before things hit the fan. Otherwise, they don't want to be quitting cold turkey in the middle of a crisis. But then again, the success rate of treating addicts is so low, it's probably less than 5%. I mean, almost everybody goes back on their drug. Almost everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, when we're talking about in a system where, like Mexico, there's not a lot of economic development, or it's not rich. It's not a rich country, and people don't have money. They're just gonna find substitutes. Whatever it is, they're gonna end up killing themselves with it. And they're going to be desperate, but it's just something that you're going to have to let go. And one of the things that people have to realize when they make their plan or they actually look into survival in a realistic way is that they have to understand that they're going to have family members die when there's no more medication coming through, inhalers or insulin, whatever it is that your family members need to actually live, day to day or whatever. When all that is cut off because, medicine is too high or there's an EMP and there's nothing running anymore, then you have to make sure that in your plan, you know how to take care of those needs or have the mind, to actually the mental toughness to deal with a family member dying. It could be your daughter, it could be your son, it could be your brother, it could be your dad. You have to make sure that you consider that in your plan as well.
That's a really good point, Jose. I'm glad you brought that up because, a lot of people in America today, let's say they're type 2 diabetics, and someone like me will talk to them and say, hey, why don't you change your lifestyle so that you don't need insulin? Because you can change your diet radically, stop eating all the ice cream and the soda and everything. And they'll say things like, no, I'm controlling it with insulin. It's fine. I can keep eating ice cream and birthday cakes and I just take insulin. Well, guess what? Insulin doesn't store very long.
Right.
I mean, it goes bad. The minute it loses refrigeration, it's over. So when the grid goes down, your insulin goes down, guess what? You're going to be on a, in a serious world of hurt if you haven't thought about nutrition before that day.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something that people really need to consider and be mentally prepared for those things, because sadly, we have a lot of people who depend on depression medication. They cannot, actually withstand to live day to day just as normal as we see it now with all the luxuries that Americans have. When all that is taken away, we're going to see suicide rate go through the roof. Yeah,
that's true. I think we're already starting to see some of that from the lockdowns. Okay, as we're getting close to the end of the hour here, let me ask you a personal question. To what do you attribute you come across as someone who has good mental toughness. You've really thought about where things are going, and you have this willingness to take action. And that's a pretty rare trait in society today. How did you come to acquire that attribute?
Well, really, it's just what I've experienced in life. So before, when I went to Mexico to fix my status, from the age of 10 to 19, I lived the American life, everything that Americans had, I had too, and my days of being in Mexico, they were pretty much forgotten until I went back. So one of the things that I've experienced when I was there is that I went months without eating because I didn't have any money. I had my 2-year-old son with me at that time, and I had to stop eating so I could get him something to eat. All those things that never crossed my mind because I had this wealth in the United States, because in the United States, people get EBT, people get all these government help, they have all these social safety nets that other countries just simply do not have, they cannot afford. And that's one of the things that I came to realize and that I experienced myself. So that's the reason why I started, preparing, because I did know some things about preparedness, but I never applied it. Not the way to I have it now, So that is the reason why that I'm the way that I am now. The things that I realized, the things that I lived through is, life experience. It's a real, I always say pain is a real teacher, because life doesn't care what you think, doesn't care what you do have or don't have. It's going to take you through it. And if you don't have the mental toughness to actually deal with it, then you will not come out on the other side.
Yeah, well said. That's fascinating to hear that. I'll just share a similar experience, even though I never lived in the extreme poverty that you just described, but I lived in Taiwan for a couple of years after I graduated from college, and my wife and I were there. We were so broke, and I've written about this, but at one point, all we could afford was rice and eggs and soy sauce for food. And I remember one day I found 100 NT, that was the Taiwan dollars. I found 100 NT bill in my pocket, which at the time was equal to about $4 US. And we almost cried with joy because we could afford one more meal out of that. And then my wife grew up in poverty conditions when she was a child in Taiwan. She's Taiwanese. So even though I grew up kind of in a middle class upbringing in America, I experienced what it means to have absolutely nothing, at least for a short period of time, and I made that decision. I never want to be here again. Never. And I agree with you that kind of experience makes you a tougher person, a more determined person. And yet if we look at the culture in America today, everybody's given everything. No one has to try. You're given a trophy for participation. There are no losers in sports anymore. These are over-coddled generations that have never experienced a tough day in their entire life. And they think violence is when somebody misgenders them with the wrong pronoun. They say that's violence. No, that's not violence. Not at all.
Yeah, exactly. And we're actually seeing how entitled they have been by the demands that they're making right now with Black Lives Matter and Antifa. They want everything for free. They want everything to be given to them with no effort or no work at all. So
That's
now
right.
we're going into $30 trillion of debt. And one day, I don't know when, but the day is going to come that the government can no longer help. And that's when those people are going to realize that life is really tough.
Oh, you've just hit upon something really key. Do you mind? Could you stay a couple more minutes and answer that? When the food stamps stop, what's your scenario of what that's going to look like in America?
I really believe we're going to see what we saw with the panic buying. When a lot of people freaked out and they tried to go to the store and they couldn't buy the things they wanted, they're going to fight that out. I remember seeing that at a Costco, people were fighting over toilet paper. These people are going to be fighting over food. And, food is 1,000,000 times more valuable than toilet paper will ever be. So when they see that the EBT is going to be cut off forever, that's when the real panic is going to be, because there has been times in the past when the system had hiccups and they couldn't, have EBT for a whole day. People were saying, what am I going to feed my family? The government needs to, get it together. Well, when it actually stops, then that's it for them. Reality is going to really kick them in the rear end.
Yeah, that's right. And I think there are maybe around 40 million Americans on food stamps right now, although that number's gone down from, it was almost 49 million under Obama. Maybe it's back up again now, thanks to the lockdowns, who knows. But probably I would say half of those people, let's say 20 million Americans, really have no alternative. They depend entirely on that system. And when it goes down...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Something that we have seen is that what's been a real lifesaver in the past few months is the food banks. Another safety net that other countries simply do not have is that these people have actually the opportunity to go in their cars, not actually walk there, but go in their cars to get the assistance that they need from food banks. But they are also running out of food. It's going to be the day when they run out of food.
I know. And isn't that funny also? It's a symbol of how rich America is. People don't even realize that you go to a food bank in your car. It's like...
something that I've pointed out in my podcast is America is so blessed and so rich that you can drive a few miles down the road to get free food in your car, in your luxury car, in some cases.
Yeah, I know. In your SUV, you're like loading up on free food. Everywhere else in the world are lining up barefoot, to get, Venezuela, India, wherever, the people don't realize that poverty is actually the dominant position of the human population around the world. More people live in poverty than in any other economic condition right now, today.
Yes, and one of the reasons that our system has not collapsed is because of all the money we're printing. One of the things that I've discussed in my podcast is that Venezuela only owes $160-something billion. Compared to the United States, that's nothing. We owe almost $30 trillion. How much more is it going to keep going before it actually collapses? And people need to realize that when it actually does collapse, it's going to be a lot worse than Venezuela will ever be, because we owe a lot more money.
See, that's another really good point you're making, that everything we're seeing right now is kind of a very valuable practice run for the much crazier time to come soon. Because you're absolutely right. You can't just print tens of trillions of dollars without consequence. At some point, and probably soon, that dollar collapses. That fiat currency becomes worth zero. And when that day comes, you're not going to have, 0.1% of the population in the streets. You're going to have 30% of the population in the streets, tens of millions of people.
Yeah, and something that we saw in Venezuela and other places, the people who actually have the money, instead of trying to stay there and live through it, they're just going to get out of the country.
That's true.
So all the people who cannot afford to get out of the country, they're the ones that are going to go through it. And one way that I have explained it to people, who I talk to personally, is that just imagine you have a credit card that has no limit, right? And a very low minimum payment. And that credit card, you pay it once a year. You may lose your job in the first 3 months of it, But since you don't want to lose your lifestyle, you keep charging that credit card all the way to the end of the year until the bill comes due and you cannot pay it. That's the same thing, or the same principle you can apply to the economy right now, to all this money printing that we're seeing. One day it's going to be where we cannot print anymore, or we may, but we're going to look like what's the place called?
Weimar Germany.
Zimbabwe. That's who I was thinking.
Oh, Zimbabwe. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Zimbabwe, sure. Where you have to look like Floyd Mayweather, walking around with a duffel bag in order for you, just gas up your car. So one of the ways that I see it going, that they're gonna make us go into a cashless society, is by doing hyperinflation throughout the world. True. Because you don't want to walk around with a duffel bag full of money, because it won't be practical. They're gonna make you put it in the bank, and once they have all that money in the bank, then they can do their cashless society.
Yeah, that's true. And once they have you on a cashless society system, then they can block you from buying guns and ammo just electronically. They can track everything you do. They can tax you without your consent by just deducting from your account. I mean, it's like a monetary police state at that point.
Yeah, that's what I see. That's how I see it coming. At least in my opinion, I think they're going to hyperinflate the entire world, because we see other places who are actually having problems with their economy as well. They're printing money too, negative interest rates. All those things are eventually gonna come to roost, I guess you could say, and not even the rich people will be able to get away from it.
Right, that's true. Yeah, well, that's why the rich people are converting their dollars into gold or land or what have you. Okay, well, you seem really well informed on a lot of topics, so I'm really glad that you've got a voice and you're helping people get prepared. I really want to thank you, Jose, for joining me today, and encourage our audience to visit your website, manmadesurvival.com. And please keep posting your videos on Brighteon.com. We really welcome, a lot of voices on preparedness and political analysis and all those things. So thank you so much, Jose. It's been a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. We'll talk again sometime about, especially when things start getting crazier, I'd like to get your opinion on what that's looking like. And it's probably not that far away. Of course,
I don't think so.
The big question is, how long can we even use the internet, to do these interviews?
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully for many more years, but I don't know at this point.
Well, I'll tell you what, if the internet goes down, I'm going to be busy anyway. I've got plenty of prepping to focus on. I've done a lot, but there's a lot more that we could always do, right?
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
Internet goes down. Hey, everybody, you're on your own. so maybe download these interviews. Store them locally on your hard drive or something in advance, so you can go back and get these later if your computer works. But again, thank you, Jose, from manmadesurvival.com. It's been awesome. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care then.
Thank you.
A global reset is coming, and that's why I've recorded a new 9-hour audiobook. It's called The Global Reset Survival Guide. You can download it for free by subscribing to the naturalnews.com email newsletter, which is also free. I'll describe how the monetary system fails. I also cover emergency medicine and first aid and what to buy to help you avoid infections. So download this guide. It's free. It's my gift to you, simply because I want like-minded people to survive.
The Man-Made Survival Show.